Hello, Old Timer here again. This is a reading from a book entitled A Handbook for Humanity. This is section 1. It's part 4, which is part of my autobiography. Okay, I'm going to start Second World War years. There was a 2-lane highway in the area where I lived, and country dirt roads ran off in the both directions, one towards the ocean and the other direction towards the west. There were small family farms or houses with garden areas on one side or the other, all the way down the road as you go west for miles and miles. About a mile from where the dirt road that I lived on the west side ran into the paved highway, there was a small Standard oil gas station. When I was really young, there was very little traffic on the paved road. Most of the time it was empty, except in the fall and spring months. My dad said that cars from New Jersey and New York and up north would come through every once in a while, and if any of them stopped at the little station, they said they were going way down south and to Miami Beach or to Miami. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and all through the war years, that road was filled with convoys of military trucks of all kinds, war materials, and pulling heavy guns, and trucks loaded with soldiers up and down the road all the time during the war years. Something happened about the time we heard the U.S. was going to war against Japan. We lived a good ways west on the dirt road I was just talking about from the highway. Anyway, one day I was out there in our near garden, that was the one closest to the house, picking some tomatoes for my mom, when a car on the dirt road stopped and started honking the horn loud 3 or 4 times, and a funny dressed man with black hair, none of us had black hair except the colored people, he got out of the car and started hollering at me. I put down the basket of tomatoes and walked over to the fence, and by the time I got there, he was standing just across the fence talking some kind of funny talk at me. I finally understood that he was asking me which way to Charleston. I told him that I didn't know for sure, but I thought it was that way, and I pointed towards the north. And he said, which way to Jacksonville? And I told him again that I was sorry, I didn't know. And he said then, boy, there ain't much between you and an idiot, is there? And without thinking, and I don't know to this day where my answer came from, but I said, no, sir. Back in those times, all us country kids were taught to say no, sir, and yes, sir, to older people. Anyway, I said, no, sir, just this fence. You lost, I ain't. He started calling me all kinds of things I couldn't understand, but as he drove off, I saw that he had a New Jersey tag, and at the time, I had no idea about New Jersey, but I decided right that moment that New Jersey must be a bad place. Turned out, a few years later, when I was in the military, one of my best friends was from Toms River, New Jersey. You just never know. Right around the time all the talk about a war with Germany was going on, I knew my mama's mother's family had come from Germany, but I didn't know where that was, of course. My dad bought a Caterpillar crawler tractor and quit using the oxen that I was talking about in another video to drag the logs and poles that he was selling to the WPA buyer and to a sawmill, a man that put up close to us. I learned to operate that thing as good as his worker. My grandmother had kept a lot of land when my grandfather died, and my dad made a deal with her to cut a lot of her timber and get it to the sawmill for her and split whatever they got each payment half and half. He got a big green Ford truck and made a trailer for it in order to haul the logs to the sawmill the man had started. My dad was always talking about the timber because the government was after him to supply them with more and more. This was during the Second World War I'm talking about. My dad stayed in the timber business until he got too sick from cancer to see about anything. By the time I was getting out of high school, he was in the timber business and had 2 foremen running a truck farming business that had started up right after the Second World War ended. It was a business. People had bought tractor trailers back in that day, and they would come around and find out if we would grow things like tomatoes or bell pepper or okra or sweet corn, things like that for them in our marsh fields. And if we agreed, they'd give my daddy a little down payment and a telephone number to call them when it was ready. Anyway, he did that. Of course, we had to go to town to a telephone call. We didn't have one to call them. But they would come by and we'd load up the trucks with whatever it was they were buying, and they'd pay us in full for it right there. And then they'd go somewhere up north, said Philadelphia, New York, and sell it. Just a couple of years, I think it's, looking back, it must have been like 1947. My dad bought a new Chevrolet car, and that's when they first had started making them good after the war, after the end of the war. He taught my mom how to drive. I think she was a natural because after just a few tries, she was riding him to visit our neighbors every Sunday evening up and down the road. Starting with the 9th grade, I had to go to a different school where all the students from the 3 primary schools in the county were put together, and me and Tommy got put in a class with 10 other kids our age. My dad had spent time with my childhood neighbors' friends, and he knew who they were, so he trusted me all the time. It didn't matter if we went off of what we did. Anyway, me and Tommy, we got involved in football, and during when we was in the 9th grade, the school has hired a new football coach for the first time, and he was organizing the first team for the school. And the football coach they hired, he had fought in been in the Marines in the Second World War, and before that though he had already graduated from the university in our state before he went into the Marines. Anyway, he fought in the Marines on Guadalcanal under Major Chesty Puller, and he was very proud of that. And since I've learned that he had very good reasons to be proud. He come to our school anyway when I was in the 9th grade, and they started to have PE classes, and he taught them, and he started organizing the football team. Anyway, about 2 weeks after school started, he had us all in the PE class to race 100 yards, and I never have raced really against anybody except the little kids in my group. Anyway, I won the race, and we had 2 or 3 races with all the different kids from all the PE classes, and I won them all. And so I didn't know what was going on, and he started talking about he was choosing people for the football team, and he chose me. So after that summer, after the 9th grade, I didn't get to spend that much time with my kids that lived right around me like I had in all the years before, because by mid-July I had to start going to all-day football camp, and so I didn't really spend that much time with them after then, except a little while after the school got out in May and the football camp started. My football coach I'm talking about, he in the PE classes, he would make us start doing all kind of exercises, and he had to teach us, but none of us knew anything about any kind of exercises, and he had to teach us, and he gradually, of course, we didn't know then, but he gradually increased everything we did. And he started telling us, he called us men. He started telling us that he was going to make us real men, but both physically and mentally. And he worked at it. He was tough, but you could also talk to him. He was a great teacher of men. Anyway, I was always first in every race, and I got to be the wingback on the single wing offense that he had us run when the first game of the first year started. We played back then with leather headgear and with no face guard, and we played all the game. We played offense and defense. If we had the ball, we ran our offense, of course, and then when the other team had the ball, we had to play defense. And I played in the 6-2-2-1 defense, and I made a lot of tackles because I was on the left side, and most plays back then was running plays, and they would try to come around the right side, and I would get to make a lot of tackles during my years in football. And a big year at that 9th grade for me, because kind of a unexpected thing happened. I hadn't really put much effort in my schoolwork up until then. I usually sat in class thinking about all the outside things I wanted to do, and after I finished the little jog my dad had waiting for me every evening. Anyway, just as the football coach was getting us organized, I accidentally stumbled upon the encyclopedias in our school library. As I remember it, I just randomly pulled one out and kind of let it open. All at once, I was reading about how ships measure how fast they are traveling. It even explained how it was done way back in the days of sailing ships. I was really hooked, and after a few weeks of hearing from Coach on how important getting an education was, I really got interested in school and did real well. Another reason I did well was because none of our teachers would let us fail. We didn't have but 11 most of the time, and one year we had 13 kids in our class. So and we had the same 6 teachers I did from 9th grade all the way through 12. One teacher would teach all the science, another would teach the history, and so forth. And like I said, the coach, he taught PE classes and coached the basketball that he started after the football season also. And the guidance counselor was also the study hall teacher. I don't know the exact details, but somehow through the government in 1938, we got electricity. A power company called Rural Electric Association, or REA for short, put up poles and strung power lines all up and down the dirt roads all around us. The reason I mention it is because when I got hooked on reading, we had electricity, and my mom would have to come to my room at night and order me to turn the light out because she was trying to save electric money. She would always find me laying across my bed reading. When I graduated from high school, my football coach already had a little scholarship at junior college lined up for me. Back then, the state I was in, they had 2 big universities, but one university had junior colleges, they called them. It was 2-year colleges scattered around the state, so people didn't have to travel so far to go the first 2 years of college, and that made it a lot easier. Anyway, my football coach had me lined up for one of those 2-year scholarships to play at a junior college, but 2 of my close friends, they were going to the main university, and I decided to go with them rather than going to the junior college. Boy, that was a big mistake. Our school counselor helped all of us get admitted. You didn't have to take tests then, just a letter from the counselor saying she was confident or we could succeed in college. Let me tell you about the dormitories. They were separated then for boys and girls. There was a little anteroom at the entrance to all the girls' dorms, and a girl student was always posted there during visiting hours, and that was as far as any guy could go. And back then, male students, any students actually, but most girls didn't, you weren't allowed to smoke, and drinking alcohol and using vulgar language would get you expelled in a heartbeat. And my little group of three, the two friends and me, we first couple weeks at the university, we met a flock of girls who were attending a nearby nursing school. To make a long story short, I guess we spent too much time having fun with all the girls. None of us had ever really met any girls our age except the few at high school. We all went back home for Christmas vacation. Back then, the college year was divided into 4 quarters. The fall quarter ended with the Christmas holiday vacation. I got my driver's license on my 16th birthday then because it was near Christmas, and my mama took me in her car that Dad had taught her to drive, and we went down and got my driver's license. And anyway, just a few nights after the New Year's, I went out with my friends. That's all we did over that Christmas holidays. We went out all the time. My mom would let me borrow the car, and we just had a good time all during the Christmas holidays. But a few days after New Year's Day, my mama told my dad one morning that she wanted to go with me to the nearby little city to help me buy some new clothes better suited for spring quarter of school. My dad didn't really answer. He was kind of a stoic anyway. Even I always talk about what he said. He only said a few words at a time, and then he wouldn't talk much for a long time. Anyway, he just kind of grunted when she said that, and he said something like, "Just a minute." And in a moment, he come back with an envelope from which he took out an official looking paper. It turned out to be my grades for the fall quarter of classes I took at the university. Back then, a student's grades were mailed directly to the parents. He showed it to my mom, and I thought she was going to pass out right there on the spot. Then he showed it to me, 2 F's and a C. My dad said, "Won't be any need in taking him to town. Just help him pack his things because we just wasted $900, and now's the time for him to start getting the money he wants to waste for himself. Period." He never gave me another cent the rest of his life. Anyway, my mother did exactly what he told, and she drove me to the little crossroads village down the highway where the Standard Oil station was, and with my things. On that day, like he told me, I told her. I was so lucky because my dad's uncle lived there, and he was a railroad station master and telegraph operator. Everybody called him Uncle Milton. His only son had got killed in the army somewhere in Central America before the Second World War. Anyway, for some reason, I believe I was a favorite of his, and from when I was really small, sometimes we would go by there. My dad would go by, visit him, whatever. And over the years, I got interested here, seeing him use a key and send and receive messages. I got so interested in that. Believe me, before I was out of high school, I learned the code and could send, because he set up what he called a practice key, where I could use it sitting over to the side, and I learned to send and receive the railroad Morse code back then. Lucky thing I did, because a little bit later it turned out was what I was going to need was a job. More later. Thanks for listening.